And then when it's time to hit publish, part of us goes, what are people going to think? What are they going to say? Like, this practice that I created is meant to help you recognize when you find yourself up against that feeling in that moment, and how to work through it, breathe through it, and stop collapsing, so that you can begin to expand more fully into that place, the capacity to be seen.
Hello, dear listeners. It's that time again when we stroll through the paths of ambition, desire, and success. Welcome to the Dare to Declare podcast, where we explore the enchanting world of giant manifestors who turn their visions and goals into the stuff of legends. I couldn't help but wonder, how do some people create the lives they've always dreamed of? Is it the magic of manifesting, the power of perseverance, or perhaps just a dash of serendipity? Well, dear friends, grab your coffee cups, because we're about to spill the tea on fascinating journeys of those who dare to dream big and make it happen. Join me as we sip on success stories and ponder the ever-enticing question, can we all manifest our dreams into reality, or is it just an urban fairy tale? I'm your host, Debbi Sluys, and I'm here to guide you through the labyrinth of achievement with heart and soul. Ready to dare to declare? Let's get started.
Hello, everyone. I say this every time I'm excited, but I really am, because the excitement that I feel is based on the energy that was exchanged last time I met this woman in person. And I met her first online, and then we met in person. And now again, I get to share her with you. Her name is Meg Pearson. She's a former live television director turned speaker, breathwork facilitator, leadership and visibility coach, and founder of Rebel Soul Media, a web design, branding, and business consulting company for purpose-driven entrepreneurs. So before she entered the wellness industry, Meg spent more than a decade working behind the scenes in national broadcast media for major Canadian networks, including CTV, and CBC, where she directed live television, produced content, learned firsthand what captures attention, builds trust, and moves audiences into action. Over the last 15 years, she's built a career at the intersection of wellness, entrepreneurship, media, and personal transformation. So I'm going to share a lot more when we get into conversations, but I just also want to highlight that Meg brings a rare combination of creative direction, media experience, and embodies leadership in her work. She's also the author of 4 cookbooks. So cool. And a children's book. And 2 new books are on branding, reinvention, leadership, are currently in development. And we're going to talk more about that for 2026, 2027. But today, Meg helps entrepreneurs regulate, recalibrate, and reinvent through breathwork, branding, web design, speaking, and strategic consulting. Her work challenge is the idea that personal growth must be an endless pursuit of healing, instead helping leaders build business, brands, and that evolve alongside who they are becoming. Welcome, Meg.
Wow, that's a big bio. Did I write that?
I think so.
That's like my book right there, right?
Whenever someone reads mine, I'm always like, bippity boppity boo. Like, it just feels like, magical. Like, you go from rags till all of a sudden it's like sparkly, like, wow. Yeah. And it's wonderful to have it read back. I think we need to read our bios more often to go, dang, girl, look what you accomplished.
Look at what I've done. Like, and that doesn't even have everything in it. So I feel thank you. This feels good to me on a Friday morning to remind myself. And this has been a lesson I've been working on this year is look how far you've come. Like, look how far you've come has been a big lesson that keeps circling back to me this year, and working on the gratitude of that. Like, I'm so grateful and I'm ready for more. I'm so grateful and I'm ready for more.
Okay, so we're going to expand on that. Let's start back because you were, when we've had a conversation before, you were so gracious to share some of the dark times that you've experienced, some of the ways that you hid it from others, and then some ways that you found redemption. And you're continuing to do that now as a mature parent. Let's just say that. So let's go back. So one of the things you told me when we first met was that you were an alcoholic for 20 years. And in fact, it even started back in high school where you had blackouts. And that lasted up until like you were 37, but you were a functioning alcoholic. Can you talk a bit about that and your work in the TV industry? And how did you manage to hide that from people?
Well, it's interesting because, as you said, the blackout drinking started for me in high school, and it started just as weekend benders and very quickly morphed into I was skipping school to just go and get drunk in the afternoons. I would wait for my bus with gin and peach juice in my coffee cup in the morning. Um, and back then, obviously, I couldn't hide it very well because I was a teenager. It was all very new to me. My mother picked me up multiple times in ditches on the side of the highway. She found me face first in on cement parking lots and had to pick me up and drive me home. And she would just deposit me in the bathroom overnight. It wasn't easy for me to hide my issues in my teens. And I somehow got my stuff together enough, my shit together. Sorry, I swear I said stuff together. And I was like, who means that? No one there. I was like, no one, I don't say that. I got my stuff together, got my shit together well enough for my family, my parents to feel okay sending me off to college. And that's where things really started to kind of go more off the rails. And at the same time, I was creating a life of my choosing. By the time I went off to college, I was like, I want to be a television director. So I went to college to do a television broadcasting diploma course. And for the first time in my life, I was creating the path for me. I was creating the life of my choosing. And so I knew that I think there was some part of me that knew that I couldn't continue acting out and allowing my addictions and afflictions to rule my life the way that I had up until that point, because then this path that I was creating for myself, it wouldn't come to fruition. So I somehow managed to hide my eating disorder, hide my alcoholism from my roommates in college, and continued on down that path into my career in television. Now, what I look back and can reflect on is that, and I just wrote a Substack about this week, is the awareness that for at least a decade of my life and more, but in the television industry in particular, my life consisted of throwing everything I had, all of my functional goodness, all of my creativity, all of my leadership into my career as a television director. I was directing television by the time I was 24, 25 years old, like at the major networks in Toronto. So I rose to the top really quickly. Um, and I've always been someone that if I put my mind to it, I make it happen and I do a really good job at it. Like I don't aim for mediocre. Like I aim for, I want to be the best at something.
Yeah.
And so I put everything I had into those buckets. And then that would not leave any room for me when it came to all of the other pieces of the pie, so to speak. So I would have no energy left for relationships, for health, for all of that, the other important, very important areas of our life. So I put everything into my career. So in my day job, whether I was working an 8-hour day, a 12-hour day, I looked so professional. I looked so together. I did an amazing job. I got all the accolades. But as soon as I would clock out, I would go home. And from that moment to the time I went to bed, it was dedicated to my addictions because I didn't know how to be by myself. When I was working, I was surrounded by people. I was being cheered on. I was doing a great job. The little broken girl inside of me felt proud for the first time in my life. But as soon as I would leave and go home and have to face myself and be with myself, I didn't know how to do that. So from the moment I would get home to the moment I would go to bed, I would be either binging and purging because I was also bulimic for the same amount of time that I was a drunk, 20 years. Or drinking myself into blackout drunk or until all of the alcohol was done. And I did that for so long that I didn't have the kind of hangover that, say, I would have as a teenager or what I would have now as a 46-year-old woman. If I choose to have a couple of drinks, I would get hungover. But back then it was just part of who I was. I just got used to functioning in this constant state of hangover. And because I just knew how to turn on and turn off, people never suspected it in the light of day. It wouldn't be until I overstayed my welcome at a shift at work and I would start to shake a little bit. And my patience would be like I would have a very short fuse and I would just essentially shut down, that it would become a little bit more obvious that there was more to the story to Meg than what meets the eye. But the difficult part was working in the industry, the television industry. This was 2001 till 2012 is when I worked in the live television industry in Toronto. Striving to look a certain way, AKA very thin. And this was like still Kate Moss and all of that imagery was what was at the forefront of the beauty industry at that point. It was normal to be striving to be smaller. And it was also very normal to be partying. I worked morning shows a lot of that time. So I would have to be up at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning And I would still go out and drink vodka and Red Bull until 1 o'clock in the morning, and then wake up and take some sort of upper medication to get me through my morning shift. And I wasn't the only one doing it. There was a lot of people that I worked with that were living that same way. So it was almost like a permission slip to be functional. I remember my very first full-time job was with Much Music, which was the then Canadian version of MTV, where we were live.
Cool.
It was so cool. And that was back when we were live from 9 a.m. till 9 p.m. with a VJ who was there, like talking about the latest videos and throwing to the videos back when Avril Lavigne was just starting out and Nickelback. And
Speaker's Corner. Was that
it's
Speaker's Corner?
yeah, speakers
That
corner.
down Bare Naked Ladies, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I worked as a VTR operator for Much Music, which was Speaker's Corner was right there on the corner at Queen and John. And if you just walked like 5 feet further on Queen Street, there was a big glass wall. It was like a big fishbowl studio. I worked just inside that wall against a big wall of VTRs, which is essentially the VCRs with all the music videos in it. And this was before everything went digital. So when the VJ would say, Rick Campanelli would say, "Hey, let's look at the latest video from Avril Lavigne," it would be my finger that would literally press play on the music video and then rewind it when it was done and put in the next video, Black Hole Sun by Soundgarden. Like, that was my job.
Wow.
And I just told someone the other day, I used to carpool to work with Ed the Sock. So if there's any Canadian listeners, Ed the Sock,
Oh my goodness.
his name was Steve Kersner, and he and I drove to work together.
He
Yeah.
has a very dirty mind, right?
Yes. Yeah. And he's still out there doing stuff. I actually just found him somewhere on YouTube or somewhere recently.
Oh my goodness. But very sarcastic, very
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. And
That's so
political,
funny.
very political as well. But what I was going to say is, like, I remember one of my first shifts, once I got to know my crew, and keeping in mind, I was 21 when I started working there. I believe I was 21. And most of my crew were 30 plus to middle age. Once I got comfortable in my crew, my technical director, his name was Dave, so he was kind of like the boss of the crew. He started taking me for pints of beer at the beginning of our shift. Like, do you remember Electric Circus?
I know the name, but
It was a Friday night dance show. So it was essentially a nightclub on steroids broadcast on live TV on Friday nights on Citytv. We worked at that show. Everybody was drunk. The cameramen were drunk. The technical team. My boss would bring me, and we would get drunk before we would work our shift. So this whole drinking and functional alcoholism was really immersed into the
Right.
industry at that time. I don't think it's probably not kosher now, but it supported me being able to just keep doing what I was doing and
Right.
and creating even more of an imprint in my belief systems that this is okay, that I can just keep numbing and running and hiding from myself, you know?
And the numbing and the hiding, and this is something that you shared with me, was back from when you were a little girl on a school bus.
Yeah.
And, there've been multiple instances where I think you counted up to 11 within your life where men over the years have taken advantage of you. And so this is where, when you see on the other side of it, like the numbing behavior, like bulimic behavior, as well as like the alcoholism, it's about this pain, right? That keeps surfacing when you're not busy, when you're not contributing, when you're not getting those accolades, that your worthiness isn't being stroked. And it's like, then you're left to sit in quiet, and that's
Mhm.
when the pain surfaces.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, when I was in elementary school, that's when it happened on the school bus. It's where a lot of my, I guess we can say, where my trauma began, because it was an ongoing trauma. It was complex because it wasn't just with one man and one circumstance for me, but my earliest recollections of having a predator molest me was on my school bus. I rode the same bus from kindergarten to grade 13. So that meant when I was in elementary school, I was sharing the bus with other high school students. And it was a high school boy who took a liking to me and would touch me, grab me, say dirty things, slip into the seat beside me, have his hand up my skirt, wouldn't let me walk down the aisle by him without grabbing me. And that went on for a long time. And it's interesting because I have memory of trying to communicate to authority figures what was going on. And I also know that where I was in the state that I was in, I probably wasn't communicating it fully and clearly, but it did create beliefs for me from that young age that I wasn't worth saving and that the men in my life did not protect me from the harmful men in my life. And that was something that did follow me through all of high school. There was many circumstances where, yes, I was drinking too much because that was a theme as well. But I woke up multiple times from being passed out to having men taking advantage of my body. And so it just kept repeating and repeating and repeating. And then I ended up in relationships in my 20s. The few that I went into, because I wasn't in very many, because I was, like I said, it was my career and my addictions. I did fall into a couple of long-term relationships in my 20s, and they were both also very similar in nature, where it was very transactional, my body for what the men would in turn give me, which was fake safety and love and worth. Like I felt worthy because they were loving me in exchange for them just taking and taking and taking from me sexually.
Right.
Yeah.
So one of the men, and he was an older man, like you were younger and he was older than you, and you became engaged, correct? Like he became your fiance. Can you talk about the spatula incident?
So this is another whole Substack that I'm writing. What I learned when I swallowed a spatula and almost suffocated to death. And spoiler alert, I learned nothing. At least not at the time. I didn't learn anything at the time. It took
Right.
years of reflection to fully understand what was happening there. Because that you would think that would be a rock bottom moment of your life, but it really didn't change anything at the time. Yes, I was in a relationship with an older man. And it's not a huge deal that he was an older man, but it is a huge deal when I think back because he had lied to me about his age for whatever reason. When we met online, he had told me he was close to my age, only 3 years older, but in reality, he was much older. Um, and he and I fell in love fast and furious. I look back and I was desperate to be loved and to be rescued, and and we fell hard and fast. Around the time we started dating is when my father was diagnosed with 2 illnesses, and we were told that he wasn't going to survive for very long. It was ALS and Lou Gehrig's disease, which is ALS, and FTD, which is frontal temporal dementia, which is what Bruce Willis has been battling with for the last few years. But my father was diagnosed with that about 4 months after I started dating this guy, and because of that, everything kind of snowballed and went very quickly. So we only knew each other for about 4 months when he proposed to me. And I moved in, and he discovered all of the debt that I had accrued up until that point, which was a lot. And it wasn't because I was living very fancy in Toronto. I was living in a rented condo apartment. I wasn't wearing designer clothes. I was working in television. I was making a decent salary, but I was spending an awful lot of money on food and alcohol to feed my addiction. Some days $200 a day. I would go to the grocery store, buy $200 worth of junk food and eat it until I was completely numbed out, and then purge it and then get drunk and pass out. That was my life, right? At any rate, he figured out the debt that I was in, and he didn't like it. And he said, I want to marry you one day. You can't bring the debt in. You should bankrupt yourself. So I was with this guy who was much older, had lied to me from the beginning about things. He convinced me to bankrupt myself. And then I found out my dad was dying. I was very obviously mentally unhealthy, unstable at the time. And so I stopped working. And about 3 months after he proposed, which was a beautiful engagement at the boathouse in New York City, Central Park, because everything was performance in this
Right.
guy's world. We ended up getting drunk at a winery in Niagara on the Lake, and we turned into a really ugly fight, which turned into an ugly breakup. He threw a wine glass at me. The police were called.
Oh.
And then he kicked me out after that, and I was couch surfing for a time. And that's when one of the rock bottom moments happened to me. I was drunk, alcoholic, bankrupt, broke, homeless, broken engagement. My dad was dying, and I was couch surfing at friends' houses trying to find a job and couldn't get unemployment. So it was a pretty dark time. But I managed to get myself up off the floor enough to get myself a job. And one day, January of 2011, I was on the streetcar. It was snowy night, downtown Toronto. I was in the Queen West 501 streetcar on the way home. And he and I had been in and out of contact over the last 5 or 6 months. Very toxic, codependent, like, fuck you, I love you, that kind of vibe. And we hadn't talked in a while. I was actually dating someone new at the time. And I started receiving text messages from him, and they started out nice enough. Then it started, I heard you got a new job. And then it started getting nasty. And he started saying very manipulative, toxic, mean things. And then he made a comment about my new green winter jacket. And I was wearing this bright emerald green, like knee length winter jacket that I had just purchased. And it was in that moment that I realized he's here on the streetcar.
Oh,
And I stood up and I looked to the front of the streetcar, and then he stood up and he looked me in the eye, and my whole body
I
collapsed
felt that. Yeah.
and shuddered. And I was terrified. Not that he was physically going to hurt me in the moment, but what kind of person does that?
Mhm.
And so I pulled the streetcar line, I jumped off, I ran home, and I was overwhelmed with just everything. Everything that was going on in my life up until that point bubbled to the surface. And so I did what I always did. I went home and I ate whatever food I had, just scarfing it, because this was the way that I numbed. Like, food was my cocaine. I always say I never tried cocaine because I intuitively knew that the minute I tried cocaine, I would die from cocaine, because I have a very addictive personality. So food was that for me. And I would just numb, and to the point where I was distended and in physical pain from the amount of food that I was eating, knowing that inevitably I was going to purge it. Well, that night, just bending over the toilet and releasing the food wasn't enough. I needed to feel empty. I wanted to feel like I was absolutely nothing. And so I grabbed a 12-inch long Betty Crocker spatula from the kitchen, and I put it down my throat, and my hands were slippery, and it slipped out of my hand, and I ended up swallowing it.
Oh my gosh.
And it got lodged in my esophagus far enough down that there was nothing I could have done.
Oh my goodness.
And thankfully, it lodged on just an angle that I was still able to breathe.
Yeah.
And after a couple of moments of me standing there in my pajama pants, 9 o'clock at night, January, snow was falling, of me realizing what was happening, I knew, like, I better get myself to the hospital. So I went down, I got in my car, and I was living in Queen West at the time. So I drove to St. Joseph's Hospital, which was at Queen and Roncesvalles, about a 10-minute drive from where I lived. And I went into the waiting room, and I said to the ER check-in, I said, I swallowed a spatula. And they said, okay, go have a seat. I was like, okay. And so I sat there, and wasn't very long before I started swelling up and like writhing in pain, that someone else actually said to the lady, like, she needs to go in and see someone. And last thing I remember that night is the ER doctors asking me two questions: how much I weighed, so they knew how much morphine to give me, and, like, essentially told me, like, we might have to cut you open, just so you know. And I was like, do whatever you need to do. But thankfully around 4 o'clock the next morning, I woke up, came to actually listening to two nurses joking and laughing about, like, did you hear what happened to this chick? Yeah, she swallowed a spatula. Like, that's what I woke up to. So talk about shame and embarrassment. And then I was kept in the hospital for that remainder of the day. And I remember the discharging ER doctor coming to me. I was all pumped full up of all of the meds and stuff, and the IV. And he didn't say much other than, you need to make some changes in your life. Like, he knew exactly what had happened. And I said, yeah, I do. And I texted my boss, and I was like, I'm not coming in today. And you'd think that I would make a change, but within the next 72 hours, once my throat was healed up, because I ended up having to pull it up and out. So there, like, it was very swollen and very sore.
Yeah.
Within 72 hours, I was back binging and purging and drinking to blackout drunk again.
Wow. So what was the moment that you made a change? Because not only did you leave your job, leave that all behind, you moved to a new country and found a new passion. And we talked about the cookbooks in your bio. So can you talk a bit about what was the catalyst for you to discover what you were really passionate about? And I think it was food, correct?
Yeah.
Ironically,
yes.
Interesting. Can you talk a bit about that?
Well, so that hospital scenario, that happened to me in end of January 2011. And so over the next few months, I ended up shifting jobs again. I became the associate producer on a reality show, one that would have me flying all across Canada from coast to coast, auditioning kids who wanted to be famous. So it was like the next star type of show. So I was auditioning kids. So I had to fly to all the major cities. And during that time, the lead up and that travel time, which was May of that year, my father was progressively getting worse. And instead of showing up to support him, I just didn't have the capacity. I was in denial. I was terrified of what was happening. I pulled away. And I've had so many conversations with my mom about this since, and how much guilt and shame I've had to work through about my inability to show up for him and to show up for my mom and to show up for my sister during this time. Because I was bankrupt and homeless. I could have just moved home and been with my mom and dad while my dad was sick, and I chose not to do that. But during that time, May of 2011, when I was traveling with this TV show, my dad went from bad to worse. And he was in a wheelchair mid-May. And by the end of May, when I was just wrapping up the tour with my TV show, I landed back in Toronto, I believe on May 27th. My father had just gone into the hospital with pneumonia. And by Saturday, the 28th, I got the phone call at the hotel that I was staying at with my TV show to say, you need to get back home here. Your dad doesn't have much time. And I mean, this is the part that seems like it's just not even real. But that night, Saturday night in downtown Toronto, I was at the hotel. I had just auditioned kids for 11 hours. And who was there at the hotel with me, but with a bottle of wine? But that ex-fiance of mine, because we were going to give it another go.
Oh, no.
I know. I did not learn my lessons very quickly back then. And we woke up around, I think it was like 1 a.m. or 11, something in the evening, late in the evening, we got a phone call saying like, you need to get Meg home. And he rented me a car, drove me to my brother-in-law's, who then drove me all the way home to my hometown of Exeter, which was about 2.5 hours away. So I got to the hospital room when my dad was still alive, and I got to be there the next morning when he took his last breath. And I got to stand there and be present for him. And he opened his eyes and he saw that I was there. And to this day, my mom says, like, he was waiting for you. And I get choked up. I get choked up when I say that.
Yeah.
I haven't talked about that in a while, and we also just lost my mother's boyfriend. She's been with someone for 13 years since my father passed. And we just lost him 2 weeks ago. And I got to be there in the room for that as well. So that's all fresh grief. And also, I've been doing a lot of my work today around my mother's boyfriend's death recently, around all of the guilt I felt about my father's passing and not being there.
Right.
But I did manage to get to be there to see my father take his last breath. And then the week that followed, it was his memorial week, and his visitations were lined up out the door of the funeral home and down the sidewalk of people wanting to pay their respects. He was a teacher, and he taught people in the early 80s that were showing up. And this was 2011, to pay their respects. And it dawned on me, it really hit me what an impact my dad had made in the world, and how I was not doing that in the television industry, that I was not helping people. And there was a part of my soul that was saying, this isn't your path. This isn't your purpose.
Right.
So the week after his funeral, I went in and I quit my job as a reality TV producer, because Lord knows that's not of service in very many ways at all. I mean, it's entertaining, when you're consciously choosing to just be entertained by it. And I went to Cuba, which is what a lot of us Canadians have done for years. I went for a long weekend to Cuba, and I just got wasted. I got wasted every night, slept with random men, because at that point, that was one of my other tactics to not feel. But in the morning, I would go to the beach and I would just stare at the ocean hungover. And one morning I was looking at the ocean, and looking back now, I can understand that I was praying in my own way. And I was just asking the ocean, what now? And I got the memo. I heard, do what you love. And I was like, oh gosh, what do I do? What I love? I have no idea what I love, because I've been so disconnected from my desires for so long. And then the words raw food and yoga dropped in. And this was late 2000, like 2009, 2012, when all of this was happening. The raw vegan food scene had just really popped off in Toronto. And I did spend a lot of time going to these restaurants. I was practicing yoga off and on through my 20s. And I realized, like, those were two practices, when I involved myself in them, that I felt kind of okay about my body. I felt kind of okay about life. There was a vitality that they brought. And so I got home from Cuba, and within weeks, I signed up for my very first yoga teacher training to become a yoga instructor at a yoga studio that was right around the corner from my house. They had a sign out front announcing their inaugural yoga teacher trainer. I went in, I got a discount, a payment plan, because I was still in my bankruptcy at this point.
Yeah.
and got a job, a super low key job working back in television, a morning show, but it was like I wasn't the director, I wasn't responsible. I could just go in, do my job, go home, and then started training with a raw vegan chef that I knew in downtown Toronto. She took me under her wing and started teaching me everything she knew about raw vegan food. She also taught me how to create a culinary education business around it. I studied with another nutritionist who had a culinary education school, and that's where I started to kind of live two lives. So I had my day job in TV, but then I started doing food blogging, and I got a camera and I started doing food photography and started teaching cooking classes out of church basements. And then eventually I decided, hey, I'm going to go full time with this. Huffington Post had picked me up, and I had a column on Huffington Post, was writing for magazines, and then a holistic health clinic in downtown Toronto that was full of naturopathic doctors, chiropractors, massage therapists, IV therapy, all of that. They were looking for someone to run the whole administrative side, and me with my background in TV and being a leader, I knew I could do it. So I took that job. And after I was there for only 8 months, I quit to move to Costa Rica because I went on a retreat there with one of the nutritionists I had been training under. She brought 30 people down there, and I fell in love with not only the country, which I'd been to once before, but also I fell in love with the retreat center that we were staying at, and I fell in love with the couple that owned it. And while I was down there, they were a young Canadian couple from BC. They said, "Hey, we love it. We just took this place over from our mom, but we're missing one key team member, someone that can teach raw food and yoga retreats." I was like, "Well, I just happen to be doing that."
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
Listening to you, 2 weeks ago, I ran my conference and I had Brian Proctor there, and he shared a story about his father and how even when his father was very weak, Bob, and on his deathbed, he still wanted Brian to read to him. He was still studying. That was one of his practices, was to continue to study. And listening to you, I'm thinking about how studying, learning really rescued you, and that because you studied to be the yoga teacher, then you studied to with the chef, and you studied, so you immersed yourself in this higher learning, also then to reinvent the version of you, your self-image, and then got into action, because what I don't want to step over either is that the fact that you walked through the door, like you knew you were bankrupt, but you're like, okay, I'm walking through this door and I'm going to take this class. I'm going to better myself. Even so, a lot of people say, well, I don't have the money yet. So when I have the money, then I'll go and do that. No, you're like, hey, do you have a payment plan? Like you got clear on this new direction based on, it sounds like, inspiration from your father and from all the people that loved him. And you just borrowed a little bit of that beautiful energy that your father's funeral, which is so interesting, brought and inspired you. And then taking the actions, like those bold actions, the inspirational action, but also the obvious action, moving to Costa
Yeah.
Rica, and then putting your hand up and go, I can do that. And just this big shift. So I just love this. Like my podcast here is about manifestation. It's about the law of attraction. And so I just want to really make it clear to whoever's listening that this is it. This is it in action. Like we've heard her dark story, and wherever you might be able to connect to parts of what Meg experienced, maybe not exactly, but different parts of that. But then the hero's journey, right? So then how does the hero come out of that? And so just these beautiful steps around, this is how you manifest.
Yeah.
It's not something mystic. It's in the creating the vision, creating those goals, and then getting into action. So so then when you were in Costa Rica, I know that you met someone there as well, right? And so you were able to fall in love again, right?
Yeah.
You like
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
well, and I want to just say two things on what you just said. I often say my father's death is what inspired me to live, right? Like it took that very difficult, dark time in my life to give that universal 4x4 across the head. Like this is your trace.
Say, did we say that already? Because I had that in my book.
Really? No.
Yes,
That's hilarious.
2x4.
I love that.
Maybe Lasagno says that, like 2x4 to the head, like that's how it feels, like that the universe has to go. whack.
Yeah. Like the Mack truck, right? Like that's totally, I love that. And I don't think I've heard you say that, but I've always said that. And I love that we have that resonance.
Wow. Okay.
Because sometimes it's like the whisper, it's a little tap, and then it's a niggle,
Yeah.
then it's a little shake, and then it's like the
Yeah.
signs, and then the universe is like, hello.
Right.
And then you're like,
Wow. Like, and you're on
yeah,
knees, right? And you're like, I'm paying attention now. Okay. Okay. Got it.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you know, and I want to just, I like, that's what I often say, like, my dad's death taught me to live. And when I tell that story about deciding to become a yoga teacher and the chef and all of that, like I usually always say when I'm doing it in a workshop, for example, it's like the minute, like, of course I got a discount and a payment plan on my yoga teacher training. Of course, the one chef that I love took me under her wing, because when we are finally on the path that we're meant to be on, the universe rolls out the red carpet and is like, and here you go, you know?
It's about time.
It's about time. Like when you are finally open and trusting and taking the aligned action, the universe is like, okay, great, here, you know? And everyone's like, you're so lucky. I'm like, no, I worked my ass off to both have the vision and the intention, to trust the leap without any evidence. And then I took the steps, you know, like there was a lot involved in it. Um, and so, yeah, I ended up in Costa Rica. It was the summer of 2013. I lived in Toronto. I worked to sell everything off. It's when I wrote my first cookbook, which then paid for my flights and everything to move to Central America.
Love that.
And I was down there I was down there from September 2013, and it was Christmas time of 2014 that I met the handsome Costa Rica man, and we fell in love again, fast and furious. And looking back, it was like, I did love the idea of him and our relationship more than I loved him. But that relationship was a necessary stepping stone for both of us on our journeys. And he and we ran business together. We had a catering company. We bought a bakery together, and we did that for a time. And it was during the period where we were together, and I adopted 3 dogs, and we moved like 11 times. We were just like living the Costa Rican barefoot, driving ATVs instead of cars, and motorcycle kind of life.
Is this where the tattoo came in?
No, the tattoos mostly came later. I got a few tattoos while I was still in Toronto, when I was like, okay, I'm moving into this wellness space now, and the spiritual space. I don't have to be corporate, because television was corporate still back then.
Well, looking at pictures of you, like I saw a video that you posted, and like, yeah, like I like Kate Spade and kind of like that. Like you kind of fit that look when you were in the television, like, and then yeah, so now you're like biker babe, like badass, like it's just really really cool. But anyways, okay, sorry, go ahead.
Well, and I love it. And someone just said to me recently, like, one of my superpowers is that I can work and blend in and function and be accessible and authentic in both of those spaces and all of those spaces in between. Um, and I've worked hard to be able to own all parts of me, you know, and I think that's why I have ended up being so successful in the spiritual wellness and entrepreneurial spaces, because I did have that structure of the corporate background too. And I've been able to use my background and skills from both. Um, yeah, it was in that relationship that didn't last very long. We met at the end of 2014. We got married January 2015. Like, he had a daughter, and we were going to pick her up at her aunt's in San Jose, Costa Rica. And her aunt was a lawyer, and my husband's like, do you want to just get married? I was like, okay. And so we showed up at the lawyer's office and to pick up our daughter. He wasn't wearing any shoes. I had a shaved head and like was wearing like a hippie dress. And we were like, let's get married. And then we went for Pizza Hut. Like, that was our wedding day. And then my mom caught wind through a subtlety in something that I wrote on social media. And she was like, shut up. Did you get married? She's like, this will not do. And then we had to plan a proper ceremony. So we ended up getting married barefoot on the beach in Costa Rica in a ceremony by the ocean about 3 months later. And we had a great thing going. I recognize, looking back, like I traveled a lot. Like when we were married, I would be in the States and Canada for months at a time, doing live TV segments, doing catering events and retreats. And I didn't mind being away from him, you know? So I was like, oh, maybe that's a sign of something.
So from there, then you moved back, right? So you realized that one of the things that you shared with me was, there is politics in every business.
Yeah.
And you're going to find things that you don't like in every business. And so you decided that even though you had, the plant medicine and the retreats and the people that owned it, like it was fabulous until you were ready to shift again.
Mhm.
And so then you moved back to Canada, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then was part of that move also to be and care for your mom?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So as I left that relationship with that man, I went on to work very deeply in the plant medicine spiritual space for about 7 years. And that served until it didn't in many regards. And around that same time that I realized I wasn't in full alignment with that, I was falling out of alignment with my life in Costa Rica. It just got really hard to live so far away. At that point, I had my second child in Costa Rica. Um, for a woman in her late 30s who said she was never going to have kids, all of a sudden I was a mom of two. And my mother was down there and witnessed the birth of my son. He was a 9-pound red-haired angel that I birthed on my hands and knees on the living room floor in a rented house in Costa Rica, in like 90 minutes from first contraction to him being earthside. And he came in with a bang, and the messages he brought with him were also powerful. And it was in that moment that I looked and I saw him in my arms. My daughter was there, my husband and my mom. And I was like, why am I living here? Why am I so far from my family? And because I had been having a hard time reconciling my relationship with where I was working at the time, my life in Costa Rica, I was like, okay, this is it. This is the message that I need. It's time to close this chapter. So in April of 2023, after a decade, I moved down there in 2013. 2023, we packed up everything, 10 years of Costa Rica, into 6 oversized suitcases and a big dog crate, because I brought one of my 3 dogs. 2 of them stayed with my ex-husband. I had one. And we moved back here to Canada. And that was a journey all its own. Moving back here after having a career in the spiritual space that had also become much of my identity, I went through a pretty hard period. Not only did the house we buy come with its own challenges like black mold and asbestos, so a lot more financial setback than we had anticipated. The integration of moving back to the culture of just being in Canada was difficult. The systems were difficult. The fact that we moved back to the same small town where we still don't really have much in common with a lot of the people that live here.
Oh, talk about the black squirrel. Is it
Oh,
black
yes.
squirrel?
Well, my husband and I have always laughed because we're these older parents covered in tattoos that have lived very unconventional lives. He also lived in Dominican Republic for 5 years before he and I even met. So he's been like living the crazy life like me.
No, this isn't the gentleman that you married in Costa Rica.
No, this is a different man that I met in 2018.
Okay.
I went into a tattoo shop, and within a few months, he and I started dating. His name is Levi. And actually, we had our first date in September of 2018, and in December of 2018, we found out we were 6, 7 weeks pregnant. So thankfully, it's worked out. Now we have our 2 children, both who were born in Costa Rica, and that's who I'm with now. And we're planning we got married in ayahuasca in an ayahuasca ceremony in 2023, right before we left Costa Rica, and now we're planning another legal marriage here in Canada. But yeah, so we moved back here, and he's been a tattoo artist for about over 10 years now. And so we knew that he was going to just tattoo here. And that's a great skill that you can do anywhere in the world. So he worked for someone else for a couple of years, but he's an entrepreneur at heart like me. So in January of 25, we opened our own tattoo shop here. And since we're both the black sheeps in this town and in our families, and we're in Exeter, Ontario, which is the home of the white squirrel. That's what this town has been known for decades, because we have white squirrels here. We
That's
decided,
so weird to me. I'm from Ontario. I have never seen a white squirrel. I got to come and visit you.
yeah, I mean, and it's been like this since well before I grew up here. Like when I grew up here, it was always home of the white squirrel. And every big event in town, there's a guy dressed up as a white squirrel. His name is Winston. He's the town mascot. It's like the funniest thing.
Hilarious. No, I mean, here where we have brown and black. And it's so funny. I think I told you share this story, but my kids always tease me because I love squirrels. I find them so funny. I actually had a little pet squirrel that I called him Huck, like Huckleberry Finn, like he was just kind of like Huck, and he would like come and like hang on our screen door, like, hey, what are you doing? And like he'd like peek, like he'd sit on the front little bistro table that I had and like look inside. And when I got a dog, he looked so pissed. Like he was like, "What the heck are you doing with another pet? Like you got me."
And
Like
you
so,
too.
I was
Right.
so why do you give animals characters? But I'm like Huck and I, we just had this thing going on. But anyway, so I just love this idea of the squirrel. Okay,
Yeah, so we decided to call the tattoo shop Black Squirrel Tattoo. So a play on the black sheep and the white squirrel, but we're the black squirrels of this town. And so we've been doing that. And then I spent about 2 years throwing spaghetti at the wall trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up, because I worked in the psychedelic world for 7 years in Costa Rica, and there's not a lot of work in that department here in Ontario, Canada. So I tried everything. What I have been doing the whole time is I do breath work. I've been a breath work facilitator since 2017. And so I've been running a virtual breath work program for women since moving back here. I'm currently running the 9th round of it. And that's been successful, but it's not been enough. So I tried everything from I tried to go back to school to be a nurse, didn't have the right high school credits, couldn't get the high school credits. I went and trained as a spa esthetician, and I was doing holistic facials and nails and all of that. And it didn't work out. When I actually I rented my own space to run my own esthetician business. Within a week of signing my lease and paying my rent, I got evicted. So it just was like one universal punch, like sign after the other, like not right, not right, not right, not right, not
yeah,
right, not right. And all the while, since 2012, I've been using my background in digital media, graphic design, and everything I took in college to run my own business. So designing my own websites, publishing my own books, launch my own podcast, social media. I've been doing all of that for myself and helping my friends do it. And then finally, in early 25, I had two people say to me, like, why don't you monetize all of the skills that you have? And I was like, skills? Because, when you're so close to your genius, you don't even recognize that it's
so often. Yeah, I
yeah,
coach people all the time. I do business coaching, and they step over it. For one, they maybe it stressed them out.
Mhm.
So in a corporate setting, but that's the gold. That's where the gold lies. I'm like, no, now you get to offer it for others or teach others how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So the minute last June is when I started to shift a portion of my business towards digital marketing and web design. And it's just taken off. It's just taken off. And what I've really discovered in the last 8 months, working with a lot of, I like to say that my ideal clients are coaches, healers, and crystal dealers. So I'm like
Mhm.
helping the people who I was for 13 years in the wellness spiritual space trying to create a business. They're my people. And now I'm utilizing my experience as an entrepreneur in that space and my background. And I went back to university last year as well, and did a bunch of nerdy digital marketing courses about SEO and all of that nerdy stuff. Um, but I'm helping people create, because so many people in this world, whether you're a massage therapist or you're a coach or you're a breath worker, you get so good at your service and your craft, but no one teaches you the nitty gritty of what it means to run a business. And you don't know the first thing about the tech behind it and systems that are required and automations and designing a website that's not DIY and it's going to suck all of your soul and energy, right? So those are the people that I'm working with now. And what I've discovered, um, when I first started doing the web design, I announced to my breathwork ladies, I'm like, I'm not going to offer this. This is the last round of the breathwork program. I'm stepping fully into a website. And they're like, no, we need to keep doing the breathwork. And I was trying, my mind wanted to compartmentalize the things. Like, there's my spiritual stuff and there's my digital marketing stuff, and never shall these two meet.
Yeah.
But what I've discovered now more than ever is that they do meet, because
Yeah.
they are mine and from me. And so many of my clients that come to me for branding and web design work, the minute I say, hey, we've got this beautiful brand, beautiful website, let's put it out into the world, let's share it, they shut down. And
Mhm.
then it's the identity work that we then do to help them step into allowing themselves to have the capacity to be seen, to be visible, to sell confidently. So now I have figured out how I can marry my experience as a coach and a facilitator that I've been doing for a decade, um, and my breath work, because I do a very unique style of breath work where we're using the breath patterns, but it's always with guided visualizations and themes and energy work. So I'm utilizing that in my coaching with my branding and business clients, so that it's like this multiple pronged approach to a living brand, or a brand that breathes, is what I'm calling it. And I'm writing a book on the same name. This idea that our brand isn't just our logos, isn't just the colors, isn't just the feel, but it is the essence of who you are as a
Yeah.
as a service provider. And it's been really such a beautiful process for me, and to be able to guide clients through it.
So good. Okay. So I want the listener to know how to reach out to you. I also know that you have a free guide, a 15-minute breathwork and visualization um, to regulate the nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And so the link I have here is,
rebelsoulmedia.ca/embody.
yeah,
Aha. So
exactly.
this is a 15-minute guided breathwork session. It is a little tiny taste of some of the kind of work that I do with my one-on-one clients and in my breathwork program. But this particular one is meant to begin the process of having the whoever's listening to it start to recognize where it is that they collapse in their nervous system, they collapse in their identity when it comes to being visible. So it walks you through very clear steps to notice, like, how many of us are business owners, and the minute we write a really powerful social media post, and then when it's time to hit publish, part of us goes, oh, what are people going to think? What are they going to say? Like, this practice that I created is meant to help you recognize when you find yourself up against that feeling in that moment, and how to work through it, breathe through it, and stop collapsing, so that you can begin to expand more fully into that place, the capacity to be seen. And I love it. And it's just a tiny little taste. There's also a booklet that goes along with it that has some prompts. It has some affirmations, and equally as powerful. So I recommend that if you download it, you do the audio and you have a look at the booklet as well. So yeah, rebelsoulmedia.ca/embody. Rebel Soul Media is the name of my business, web design and branding company. So I have Coach Meg Pearson, which is more of my writing and my coaching and all of the more spiritual, hippy dippy woo woo stuff. And then I have my digital marketing micro agency that is growing, called Rebel Soul Media. And I'm on Substack, which is where I am doing everything these days. So that's just megpearson.substack.com is where that all lives.
Awesome. We'll put all those links into the show notes. I want to say, like, in 2021, I went to Santa Barbara. I was on Jack Canfield's Success Principles, or Success TV. He interviewed me about the academy, my vision boarding process. And about a month beforehand, I realized, like, what the heck do I think I'm doing all by myself? Like, I'm just gonna show up, and, like, he's has this TV show, and I've got sort of a script ready, but I hired a visibility coach. And you are only the second person that I've ever met, and I meet a lot of people who actually specialize in this. And I really love how you're doing it around the self-image. So I got some beautiful tactical kinds of things from her, which I'm sure you do as well. Like, ways of being beforehand. Like, I didn't, and I still don't now because of that instruction from her. I don't drink alcohol like a few days before, like even a glass of wine with dinner. I don't have any alcohol. I eat really light. Just doing some, super woman kind of poses before you go in to pump up the energy, and just some things like that. But this idea of visibility, I think people really need to take advantage of that piece that you offer, because that interview catapulted me into this next level of my business. So I love that you offer that, because it's very unique. So encourage you, the listener. Thank you so much, Meg. I still have things that I want to share with you. So maybe I need to have you come back again, because we didn't even get into the fact that you are a mature parent, wisdom versus endurance. Like, I can relate to that. I had a child later on, what maybe people think later on in life. But for now, we're going to leave this here. There's so much in this beautiful chat. So thank you for being so vulnerable,
Thank you.
sharing your what were hard things as a child that you endured, and then the beautiful way that you've created this relationship with your mom. You're back into your hometown, the black squirrel instead of the black sheep. I love that. And I just can't wait to see what's ahead for you. It's going to be fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited. All the details and more coming in my 2 bucks. So stay tuned.
Amazing. Well, thanks for being here. And I want to remind the listener that, like Meg, if Meg and I can do this, so can you. And just remember to dare to declare. Today, we've delved into the realm of manifesting giants, exploring the power of declaring our desires to the universe with unapologetic boldness. But before we bid adieu, I have a little something special to share with all of you dreamers out there. Introducing the Dare to Declare Vision Board magazine and online DIY Vision Board course, your ticket to manifesting greatness in style. Picture this. Flipping through pages filled with inspiring images, empowering quotes, and step-by-step guides to help you create the vision board of your dreams. Whether you're yearning for that spacious condo with a view or a love that sets your soul on fire, our magazine is here to guide you every step of the way. Dive deep into the art of manifesting with our exclusive online DIY vision board course. Led by manifesting expert, yes, yours truly, and seasoned dreamers. This course will teach you the ins and outs of creating a vision board that speaks to your heart and soul. So what are you waiting for? Join the ranks of the manifesting giants and dare to declare your wildest dreams to the universe. Head over to our website, DebbiSluys.com, and grab your copy of the Dare to Declare Vision Board magazine and enroll in our online DIY Vision Board course today. Until next time, keep dreaming big and daring to declare, because in the world of manifesting, the sky's the limit.